tomorrow's the day. They start the legislative session, so. Thank you. No, it does have a dash. Dawn Jordan Dash Rose.
Okay. Well, I know I sent you emails before, so people that came back, but I never had time to go back and check.
Okay.
Disappointed in turn.
I've been working on this whole day.
I'm happy to pick up. Sure.
Really?
Yeah. I'm joking. It's probably not. I don't know. I didn't ask that. No, it's all.
Oh. Let me pick up a packet. They were getting ready to pick up. I thought it was starting on the next week, you said.
Pick up today and start turning
Oh,
it
you
next
pick
week.
up
Doesn't
today.
mean
I
turning
thought you
it
were
in.
saying opposite. Never mind. I'm starting.
I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order, that the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Happy New Year and good evening to everybody. It's good to see so many purple dressed people out in the audience. I know we have a big game this evening that everyone's going to want to get to, so we'll try to move straight on through this meeting. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called work session board meeting. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be two open forums tonight. Open forum number one is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number two is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation, if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Dr. Harrington, any comments?
No comments.
Any clarifications?
No clarifications at this time.
We're ready for open forum number 1. Any cards? Okay. We are not going to do closed session at this time. So we'll go down to 6.01, disbursements for the month of December. Any questions? Okay, 6.02, architects update. Mr. Williams.
Okay, real quick. I spoke to the architects about updates with the board, and of course, they are working on putting together with Ty the visioning meeting that y'all should be setting up, or maybe already set up, I'm not sure. But they're doing that pretty quick, and I also spoke to them about bringing us monthly updates if needed, moving forward of where they're at in that process, and they are more than happy to do that. We just need to coordinate that and work with them on that, and as they gain enough relevant information, they're happy to come and present to the board with that. So,
Let me add too, we talked to them about one of the trainings they want to do with the board, their first step, the visioning training, and they were willing to get it immediately. We're just trying to find an available date, and so we're going to send out, we've looked at a couple, and we thought we had a couple, and there are just too many conflicts, we just can't do it. So we're looking at a date toward the end of January. So we're going to send that out once we verify that that is good for them. They also said they'd be more than willing to come monthly, but I would suggest, I would hate for them to come without an item. So I do think we need to come up with a system of when do we want updates, because I don't want them coming when they don't have information to share with us. And I think there's going to be times where we really need them coming, and there's going to be times where it's just in between. And so I think we need to work through that, and it may be just a standing monthly if updates are available, or if the board lets us know that there are questions. But they said they are definitely here for us and will come as requested.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, you can ask them these questions. I want to know the date probably of the final plan is going to be delivered, and when that final plan is delivered, can we still make changes? That's one question. I'd like to know what the kids, the teachers, and the principals had to say when they interviewed them, because I like to know ahead of time, because we're the ones making a decision on 800 million. So I want to know that. They would, if they came tonight, they would know that answer, both those answers. Are they talking about tearing down any of the buildings? That's what parents are asking me. These are parent questions. Are they talking about tearing down any buildings on either campus? And have they found any problems as they've gotten this far that may be a problem for us in the future? Like, we didn't see the foundation problem in T building. We didn't notice this or that. Have they come across any problems as they've gone through the process? Those are my questions.
okay.
All right, well, we will get those. And then again, as soon as we get that visioning meeting, we'll have our face-to-face opportunity with for the entire board.
How long is the visioning meeting gonna last?
They thought they could do that in about an hour, and then but then I do think we're going to want some time for questions, and I think we're going to want some time for an update. It's what Mr. Cargile said, an update on the programming, the visioning meeting with the parents, and then the programming meeting that they have. So they've been meeting with those campuses, so they're going to have some information to share with us.
All right, any additional questions on the architect update? All right, 6.03, ESSER 3 compliance update. Mr. Streeter.
Good evening. This is a report that you are familiar with. You've seen it a few times over the last couple of years, so I don't think you'll find any of this information surprising or new, but I do want to take a moment to thank Marie Becker for really making an amazing transition. She's here with us this evening, and she has done a fantastic job over the last 6 months, really helping us with all of the ESSER and all things in compliance and federal funds. She's done a great job, so thank you, Marie. Okay, so as we are required to have stakeholder input, ESSER 3 grant requires that every 6 months, and so the survey went out December 8th and was available through December 22nd. And part of that was parents and staff, student ambassadors, our Better Together and Adopt a Schools partner, district level improvement committee, district stakeholder groups, special education administrators, English learners, and our homeless students. So we really tried to cast a wide net by people who are impacted through our ESSER funds. And we had over 900 responses, which is really good in that short amount of time. And as you can see on that chart, about 70% of those were from our teachers, from our parents, which is an excellent return. And then we had about 22% of our teachers respond. And so those are the people who are, again, really interested in what we're doing. And from those responses, we learned the following. So they had to rate different categories for academic recovery strategies, in-school safety protocols, and resources. And so what they had to rate these, and then we ranked based on a response 1 through 8 for our academic recovery strategies. And as you can see, tutors and interventionists were very high. And as you all know, we have spent a great deal of our ESSER funds on tutors and interventionists, which have supported our academic growth over the last 18 months. Additional classroom sections and teachers, which we've done a great deal of. Support for our special education services, our social, emotional health and wellness, our bilingual population, family engagement, summer school, and Saturday school. So as you can see, summer school and Saturday school did rank last in terms of people's preference. And again, about 70% of that was from our parents. Survey results related to our resources, continued curriculum support, our instructional materials. As you know, teachers want to have the materials in front of them, our hardware and devices, our software, instructional technology, and then, of course, nurse support. And to be expected, our nurse support, that has gone down some. At the height of COVID, if you recall, that ranked much higher about a year ago. So again, it kind of aligns with where we are right now. And then finally, our in-school safety protocols. And again, remember, these were given to them, so they had to rank them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they thought it was a priority, but they ranked them based on the 11 items we gave them. And so again, we want to have clean schools, availability for surface cleaners, hand sanitizer, all the way down to desk shields and face shields, if you notice, are at the very bottom. So again, most of that is kind of post-COVID. I hate to say that out loud. Any questions up to this point? Okay, and then ESSER funding will be used to support our plans by providing, as you know, additional support for our emergent bilingual special education materials, curriculum, translation, summer programming, social, emotional, technology, hardware, and nurse support. And all of those things are in our current plan. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move to my next report. Thank you. So we have an opportunity to make a minor adjustment to really help two campuses, in particular Arbor Creek, which we have a lot of overflow to Arbor Creek. And so we've really looked at that carefully. Scott has run a lot of numbers for us. Darla, of course, will be here if we have any really specific questions. But again, I want to make this clear, this is a very targeted and very small. Anytime you're impacting kids, it's never small, but we've tried to really isolate where we would get the most movement with the least amount of disruption. And so it's total students impacted are going to be 68 kids. And where we're looking at is the apartment complex is just east of 360 and south of Trinity Boulevard. And they're just from Arbor Creek to North Euless. So we'd move 68 kids. And I just want to show you the numbers. So if you look across, obviously we're not going to have anything for ECSC or our pre-K. If you look at the bottom, it's the total number of students impacted by grade level. And again, it's 68 total kids. Now, if you look carefully at the bottom right column, the 533 and the 787, I do want to remind you, by doing this, we're actually going to be able to bring some of the kids. We have 54 kids from Arbor Creek on overflow to other campuses. We're going to be able to bring some of those kids that live close to the campus back to their home campus. The kiddos that we're moving are already riding the bus to get to Arbor Creek. They're only going to have to ride about a mile further, and they'll all be bused, of course, transportation provided to North Euless. And so this is really going to help, one, with some of our numbers. It's going to help North Euless because they have only 467 students right now. But really, we have a lot of kids who need to come back to their home campus. And so that's the driver for this. And of course, this wouldn't be until next school year. And then let me give you a little more information than any questions you might have. So what we're proposing, obviously, is I'm going to report to you tonight. We would ask that you, if you choose to take action on this on the January 23rd. Then immediately we would have a communication plan, letter to parents, website updated, FAQs, and then we would have a parent meeting located at North Euless Elementary where the kids would be going to, so they'd have an opportunity to see the school, meet the principal, and Darla will be present to assist with that as well. And then a couple of things you might be asking. Our rising sixth graders, of course, would be allowed to remain. They would just fill out a transfer, but we would keep those kiddos there. There is no change in the percentage of our economically disadvantaged students proportionally when you look at the shift. And then all affected students would still be eligible for transportation. Any questions? Mr. Campos, I knew you had one.
So, Comrade Darla, I know we do a good job of predicting. Kindergarten's kind of hard to predict as well as pre-K. So what's our guesstimate, or what would we do, or, what if we're off a little bit? Are they going to be added to the move to the other campus, or what's our thoughts?
So Fred, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Are you talking about for Arbor Creek or for North Euless? In terms of the number being off? If we had more kids coming into Arbor Creek?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, that's a really good question. Kindergarten is always interesting to do projections on because we don't really know exactly how many. So in that grade level, every year, we simply roll up the same number, guesstimating we'll have about that number.
Okay.
It could be off. It usually is off a little bit because we don't know exactly how many kindergartens. Even with more pre-Ks this year, we still aren't going to know that exact number.
So walk me through what that looks like, Darla. So we get filled up, and then at some point during kindergarten enrollment, we say, you know what? You're being enrolled, and I know you think you're going to this school, but now you're going to go to that school?
Right, so
Okay.
same as with any grade level.
Okay.
We go up to the threshold in that grade level. At kindergarten, it's 23 to 1.
Right.
And it's 24 to 1 up through fourth grade, and then 26 and fifth, 28 and sixth. And when we hit that threshold, then they're on overflow. So
Okay.
when he said 54 students, that's a huge amount from one campus to be on overflow. And they're at various campuses, not just North Euless. We have just
Yeah, they're all
Arbor
scattered
Creeks
all
have
over.
gone,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of kids that have been put on overflow from Arbor Creek.
Yeah, and with dealing with, especially apartment complexes in that part of the district, kids come in, move in and out so quickly, it's hard to know a real number anyways, because.
Yes, and obviously, we always want to take into consideration if students have been moved more than once, but we do have a very high mobility rate there, and that's not an excuse for that, but it is, once again, trying to look at how is our least amount of impact on a child's academic and/or educational career. So we tried to be very targeted so that when we did that, we were not impacting kids that have been moved a lot of times. So that's important. Yes, ma'am.
That's a question I had in mind earlier when I talked to Joe. These kids were at North Euless before?
No, ma'am. Most of these kids before were at Veridian,
Oh,
and then from Veridian to Arbor Creek. But again, what I want to remind is that just because it's 68 kids, not all 68 necessarily
No,
have been
of
in the
course.
district, yeah.
yeah,
But it was
because it's a
Veridian.
mobile kind of a,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am, we
And
looked that up
That
today.
would have been 2019, so pre-COVID
Right.
also. So
Who knows?
probably even more mobility since
Probably
then.
not even the same
Correct.
at all, yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Any additional questions on this topic?
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
You made mention that all affected students will be eligible for transportation.
Yes, ma'am.
So even those sixth graders that are filling out the transfer paperwork to stay at Arbor Creek, will they have transportation?
Nope.
That transportation won't be tied to anything, but they, I believe, are 2 miles away.
Yeah, so I think I think all the kids who are, well, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So they're applying for the transfer.
Right,
Yes,
right,
I'm sorry, you're
There
right.
is a caveat there. If they're a transfer student, if they elect to stay at a campus, if we send them, we're going to provide transportation. But if they elect to stay there, we don't provide
Okay.
transportation.
Thank you. That's okay. Any additional questions?
All right. Ninth grade athletic update.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna let Ty pull that up. Thank you, Darla. Okay, ninth grade athletic update, and again, if you recall, back in the spring, there were some conversations about a super team and trying to look at how we could help our ninth graders be more competitive, given the nature of our district. We're the only school district left that has a 7-9 configuration. Other campuses have 9-10 or freshman centers, but we're one of the only, if not the only, campuses left in the state that have a 7-9 configuration. So we began to explore to see what could we do. And if you recall, Mr. Fielder shared a great deal of information. As we dug deeper into this, we decided to call Plano because we had heard that Plano was trying to do something similar because some of their 9-10 campuses feed more than one high school. And so we wanted to see what they were doing. Well, from that, we learned that they had approached UIL on more than one occasion, and the UIL had failed to give them any guidance, or more importantly, any approval to do that. So we spoke to UIL, and the bottom line is this: they will not support the super team. And the short of it is, and this is just a simple definition for you, but combining our junior high teams would constitute keep competing for 2-member campuses. You can't bring 2 different schools together and create a super team to compete for your high school. And so we can't do it. So the next question is, well, what can we do? And so Mike and Brandon and the coaches and principals have got together and discussed some of this. And so what we can do is we're going to look at our 9th grade student athletes. They'll be allowed to compete at their skill level, which means we will have some kiddos, athletes who can play JV and or varsity, which I think will be good. Now, part of that is we have to be careful to protect our junior highs as well, that we don't take all the very best athletes, and Dr. Harrington's been very clear about that. But so who's eligible? Our 9th graders who are capable of contributing to JV or varsity, they'll be looked at, and they will be moved up to the appropriate team, and that would apply for all of our athletic programs, girls and boys. There is going to be an athletic competition committee formed, and we're still talking about what members will be on that. But again, we do want some oversight so that we don't, for example, Central's a great example. Because it's split, we would want to be very careful that Trinity didn't take the top 2 or 3 boys basketball and then Bell take the top 2 or 3 boys basketball. That campus would be left with very few athletes. The other thing is, not very many athletes really need to go to JV or varsity unless they're going to be starters. Because the more time they have, if you really look at a lot of school programs across the state, freshmen aren't even allowed to play JV or varsity in a lot of districts because they want that development and play time. Now, we know there are some exceptional athletes that do need to move up, but those students are going to be given that opportunity. And so for competition purposes, Coach Fielder and a few people that he's going to put together are going to track that for us. And we'll be able to provide you some update on that at the end of the next year to see how many students were impacted by that. So kids who are in off-season, our athletes, as we know, we've talked about off-season, and we're already in that process at both high schools. Our off-season, we started that this fall. And at this point, I think by the end of this week, all of our kids who are capable, who are not currently playing boys or girls basketball or girls soccer, they're going to start going to their off-season programs. And that's going to be great because they get time with the coach, they get time with the whole team. We are providing transportation, and then the student athlete reports their designated locker room. They get dressed, report to the high school coach for their off-season workout. 9th grade students will appear on the high school coach's role, so he or she knows who they're supposed to have. And then if attendance does become a problem, obviously you have a conversation with the kiddo, you give them a chance, but if they can't meet the guidelines, then they're going to go to off-season back at the junior high. And so the student has to have some responsibility. And then transportation for 9th grade student athletes after the period. Parents can pick them up. They can ride the bus home if they're on transportation bus rider list, or they can stay and get in and continue to work out at the high school with the other athletes if they want to. And then 9th grade football, let me make sure I didn't skip a slide. No, okay. So another question that we had in conversation, because our 9th grade teams, you know, let's take an Aledo, for example, even though they're a 5A. Aledo has all their freshmen. So when we play in Aledo with a Central or a Hurst or any of our junior highs, they're playing all of their top freshmen. We're playing a portion of our top freshmen. So one of the things that our coaches and Coach Fielder are talking about and looking at is trying to apples to apples. Look for schools and districts that may have, no one's going to have the same configuration, but it might be playing a 5A instead of a 6A, or working with Plano to see if they're going to play some of their 9-10 teams a little bit differently, or freshman teams, so that our kids are really competing at a more fair level. Because if you notice, when we get to our varsity athletics, we compete just fine. It's really the freshman athletics where you see a discrepancy. And if we allow JV and varsity kids to move up, some of our freshmen, then we have to really be mindful of who we're playing and competing against. So they're going to work to schedule some of that. Any additional questions? And Coach Fielder is here as well, but I'll try to address them, and if not, I'll get you a board update.
First, I'd like to say that my grandkids are 9th graders now. They'll be 10th graders next year. This has nothing to do with my grandkids. I would say that I don't think very many JV kids will play up. I mean, 9th graders go to JV or varsity. I didn't see any this year in football or so far. Maybe cross country, I didn't go to that. But, you know, what the board didn't know is when Harwood went to play Prosper, it was 28-0 in the first quarter. They went and played Rockwall Heath, and it was 60-0. And so what's happening, what I see and what parents are telling me, a lot of families are leaving our district with their kids. You know, they're 27 the 2 years before the COVID year. the year Alito won state, the MVP was a Trinity kid. There's a Trinity kid at Denton Ryan. There's a Trinity kid at Denton Guyer. And the MVP in basketball is going to be a kid at Chisholm Trail, which is a former Trinity kid. So we're losing great kids and great families out of our district because of this program. And I know it's tough, and I think the word is co-op. You can't co-op schools. But what's ironic is if I'm a varsity basketball coach, I can take 4 freshmen from Harwood, 4 from Euless, and 4 from Central, and I can play them on varsity, and that's okay. But you're discriminating against the 9th grade doing it.
Well, we're not.
No,
We're-
but,
Yeah, we're
but
being
the
told. I mean,
UIL is.
Yeah, we agree with
And-
you,
And I
Andy.
know you're talking to a lady in UIL, I forgot her name. You tell Susan, what I want you to tell Susan is that we developed a system at this district to have great academics. And say we're the, only 3 A districts in Tarrant County?
Yes,
And tell Susan, we're an A district, being the most diverse district in Texas, we're an A because of our system, and you punish us athletically because of our system. And it should be the other way around. You know, they should be complaining you have too much academics, you don't stress, too much athletics, you don't stress academics. And so something needs to be done because we're losing great kids and great parents.
yeah, and Andy, just so you know, we wanted to share with you what we can do right now. We're not done working this problem, but we know it's very important that you knew what we were doing, at least currently. We agree with you. We have worked rounds and rounds. I think we've been on 4 or 5 phone calls with UIL just in the last few months. We're working with Plano. I can't promise anything that UIL will or won't do, but we definitely, everything that you said is a very legitimate argument that we're trying to say, well, tell us the why. And so we're still working on that.
You know, they're supposed to be pro-kid, or they're hurting our kids, and it's because of our great academic system.
Right.
And we know it works, and, you know, I think Grand Prairie and Louisville brought the 9th grade up to high school, and they realized it didn't work, and they built 9th grade centers.
That's correct. I was there when they did that.
Yes,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so, you know, we know 9th graders don't belong in high school.
Yeah, no, freshman centers is a different
Yes,
conversation. Yes,
and
sir.
that's a different thing.
But it does allow you to bring them all to the varsity athletics.
But what I want you to look at is, why couldn't you make Euless Junior High and Bedford Junior High 9th grade centers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a conversation you all would have. I'm just trying to
That's an
present to you.
option.
Yeah.
And really, you need to get the data and look at it and know the numbers and all that. I realize that. But the person told me already figured it out, the numbers work. It's something to ensure that our kids have a sporting chance, because those 7th graders look and they see we get blasted every game, they're moving to better programs, all through baseball, basketball, the whole program stuff. And pretty soon it's going to be band and choir and drama. You know, the school's not, you know, not going to be successful in one half, then they're going to, you know, if you're moving to Houston, if Matt moves to Houston, he's not going to move into any high school. He's going to move into one that has a great band program. And that's what parents do when they move to Austin. They're going to find the best high school that their kids is actually participating in. And so as principal, I knew that I had to have a good drama, a good band, a good choir, because those parents, and I had many parents come in. One parent said the Colleyville principal wouldn't even talk to him. And I visited with him, and he ended up moved from Minnesota. Mm-hmm. But he came for programs. And that's
I don't think that was Dr. Harrington or me, just for the record.
No.
Did you see I looked at you?
Yeah.
That was
So-
that other principal.
So,
But no, we appreciate, I mean, Andy, that's why we went down this whole
I
rabbit
think it
hole
was
to begin
Harrington.
with.
It was Harrington. But hey, the girl, this is funny, but she was in drama, and she had the lead role her sophomore, junior, and senior year in all the plays. And then the son was in band. He was a drummer. Great family.
Yeah.
But they do shop schools.
Sure,
So-
no, what you're saying is a very true statement, and I agree with you, and that's why we jumped on this to begin with. So thank you for that. Any additional questions or information I can report on?
Excuse me, a couple of questions, Conrad.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, starting with moving the JV, excuse me, take a sip. Moving the 9th graders up, when is that actually going to start?
We wouldn't start until next school year.
Next school year, August?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then this athletic competition committee, are they creating guidelines, or are they voting on the the kids? Is a decision made kid by kid, or is it just based on these guidelines?
Well, it's going to be kid by kid, but yes, we will have guidelines, and then there will be a committee that will represent both campuses so that we have input from both high schools, I should say. So yeah, we haven't formed that committee yet. We wanted to share this with you first, and then we will provide you with that update, but absolutely. But that would be for next school year.
Okay, so if a coach wanted to move a kid up, they'd have to go through this committee to get the approval.
Yes, because here's what's really important, and these are some guidelines, just, we're not gonna create extra teams, so if we have 2 JV teams, then we're gonna keep it at 2 JV. We're not gonna create an extra JV team so we can have, whatever sport it might be, a whole bunch of freshmen on that. Because again, all of us who have coached, and Andy, you know this, there's very few kids who really need to be moved up, because the way you get better is to be on the court or on the field and playing time. And part of it also, you didn't ask this, but to address, what we're trying to create too, though, is that our high school coaches have a little more face time with our athletes, and that's part of the off-season, moving them over to the high school and getting them over earlier. And that's a big part of what the high school coaches want too, is face time.
He's not gonna be able to hear you out there.
Mike, you gotta come here.
Come to the mic.
We're talking about the sports we're talking about: football, volleyball, boys and girls basketball, and girls soccer. Every other sport already comes up. So we're not talking about, the 22 different programs. We're talking about just those, mainly the fall, right? Football and volleyball, and boys and girls basketball and girls soccer. And talking about this committee, it'll be that group of sports that will have that governance. But because everybody else, golf, track, those other sports already go up. Boys soccer, wrestling, gymnastics. So that's a different deal.
And then for the off-season slide, where it talks in terms of ninth grade non-football athletes and ninth grade athletes who are not playing football. But can we read this for volleyball as well, and boys and girls? I mean, it's not just football, is it?
We're gonna do all off-season. Yes, sir, it's all off-season. We just used that because that question was asked specifically.
Okay, so if you are in off-season in the fall, you're gonna come up to the high school.
Yes, sir.
Is that group staying together to do off-season together, or are they dispersing to do sports-specific off-season?
That's two parts probably to that answer.
That is, it will be determined, and here's why. Some sports, some high school sports have their period, let's say third period. So let's just say bell baseball in the fall try. I believe Paul had third period baseball in the fall try. So bringing kids up the last period of the day, unless there's an extra coach that can receive those kids, they're going to have to go into a general off-season, because those kids cannot get up there third period in the middle of their junior high school day.
What keeps is there anything that's preventing us from moving that bell baseball from third period to fifth period?
Facilities. The reason why a sport would want third period, let's say, is because they might have the weight room, the indoor, the field, all to themselves. And most sports, particularly in-season sports, have fifth period athletics. So you've got a lot of those. And you can't have them all fifth period, because there's just, we don't have the facilities. Nobody does. Nobody has the facilities to support every program to be in the same period. So coaches strategically choose, I want to have third period, I want to have first period, because they're looking at the master schedule and trying to figure out when they can get the most bang for their buck, when they can have the weight room to themselves and not have to share it with 4 other programs, or the indoor facility and not have to share it with 2 other programs, and things like that.
Yeah, Chris, it's really, I don't want to use the word impossible, but it's almost impossible to schedule all your sports in a single period. We just don't have the space, because that's a lot of kids, because you got to talk about boys and girls. Yeah.
Well, when we get through this and work through it, let us know where the chips fall.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to give you an additional update, and once we get the committee formed and designed, we'll let you know what that looks like too, just so that you're very aware. But again, we're trying to make the best of what we have in front of us right now and still be UIL compliant, because that was very important to us and to our athletes and coaches. And then we'll give you an additional update before the summer, and then once we get some data.
Thank you.
My question is, for the competition committee, how many people will be on it and where will those people be pulled from?
Yeah, let us talk about that, and once we finalize that, I'll give you a Friday update to give you the specifics on that, but we need to still kind of wrap our head around that because we want to make it equitable and fair. But thank you, a very good question.
And just clear, when we talked about forming that and having some oversight, it was to make sure that I don't want to tell the coaches who to bring up or not to bring up, but if we see an inconsistent number and a reminder, any kid that moves up, you're displacing an upperclassman because those spots are now being filled by a freshman. And so making sure that we're looking at what do our numbers look like, how many kids do we currently have, and are we taking a good hard look at that, and it's not becoming a large number of kids coming up. Again, there are definitely athletes who definitely need to be brought up. It's just not a big number, and so this is a way that there is a bit of oversight to watch and talk through some things with coaches. This is not for us to say yes, no. This is more to have some conversations so that we fully understand what are you doing, what is this going to affect, have you thought about this, have you thought about that?
And I think it's also important to be really sure that the kid's ready to move up, because if you move them up and then move them back down, that's going to be really bad for their, you know.
Yes, sir. And we really want to support our junior highs as well, so we want to be careful how we're doing that. But at least this is going to give a few of our athletes and our coaches an opportunity to look at some that would benefit from it. So, any additional questions? Thank you for your time.
All right, item 7.01, schematic design for LD Bell and Trinity High School baseball and softball fields. Concession, restroom, building, and press box.
Good evening, Board. So tonight, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to step out of the way, but turn over to Aubrey. Many of you have worked with her with Huckabee, and she's going to show you the schematic design and the preliminaries for all the concession stands this evening.
All right, thank you and good evening. Is there a way to view the whole thing? If not, I'll just scroll. Yes, thank you. So you have these first couple of pages in your booklet as usual, just for reference later, including a narrative that I will kind of speak through in tonight's presentation. As we go through and look at all 4 of the ball fields, just want to let you know that we've met with Josh and Mike Fielder and others along the way multiple times to kind of work through what this floor plan and what each site plan will look like. Done some site visits. We're still waiting on some final survey documents to confirm some things on the site, but we've got a pretty solid plan about where everything is going to sit. So I'm going to start at the site level, and we're starting with Bell High School baseball, but you'll see similarities as we go. The new concession building, we're showing behind home plate, kind of at a paralleling Pleasant View Drive in the parking lot. If you remember, the existing concession restroom buildings are directly behind home plate, and moving them off of the backstop provides the opportunity to put additional bleachers and a pre-manufactured press box at the top of those bleachers, very similar to what the football fields at each campus has. And so this gives you some prime seating at each field right there behind home plate, and then just provides more room for circulation as everyone's going to and from the concessions and restrooms back here behind it. In addition to the building, and we'll look at the floor plan in more detail in a minute, in addition to the building and the bleachers and the press box, we're revising fencing, shown in red, where necessary, to guide the traffic flow into each facility. And so the way this works by moving this entrance down here is they will come directly up to the ticket booth and purchase tickets. The ticket booth is included in this new building. So they'll purchase tickets and then come through the great gate into this plaza area out front. Additionally, where you see number 4, at the existing bleachers, we'll be adding handicap accessible seating that does not exist at the baseball fields. And we'll be adding railings, handrails in the aisles where those are needed. And then last, number 5, the existing ticket booth will be demolished, but we will maintain the entry points where that makes sense as a, not the public entrance, but just as another secondary entrance, yes.
So has Dan looked at this from a safety perspective?
No, we have not yet at this time, but that was something on all of our plans that we're looking forward to, is to bring Dan in on all of those.
Yeah, yeah, I just see that one gate and then, yeah, so.
Okay, looking at Bell softball. Again, you'll see similarities as we go. We've offset the concession restroom building similarly to what we did at the baseball field, a new gate entrance here at the ticket booth, modifying sidewalks as needed, and then the same bleachers, identical building, identical bleachers at all 4 fields. And then we'll remove the ticket booth that sits here and then modify the existing bleachers as we mentioned. Trinity baseball. This one actually works pretty similar to the existing traffic flow. Didn't have to modify too much, but just shifting the sidewalk over, again, allowing them to come in at the ticket booth and then come in and have this plaza area here. And then the bleachers behind home plate, like the others have.
Plaza area where?
Out in front of the building here, between that and the bullpen. Yeah.
So can I ask a question about the aesthetics of this plaza area? Is it just gonna be concrete, or are we gonna try to do something to elevate it a little bit?
At this point, we're just showing concrete on most of them. Some of them overlap a little bit with the pavers that are there, where donors have put names, and we will, where that exists, we will maintain that. If any of the pavers need to move just based on the new building location, we will put those back in a new location. But right now, we've just talked about it being paving.
I just wonder if there might be, if we might look at whether or not there is a possibility to, make it look a little more
Sure.
aesthetically.
Those could easily be incorporated in, just like you see in front of the activity centers. We recess that in. We're looking to re-pour all that concrete anyways. So to drop in a sand bed and put those pavers in would not be difficult.
Yeah, we can definitely look at some options. All right, then lastly, Trinity softball, Trinity softball. Again, very similar, just having this large plaza area in the back, traffic coming in, very similar to the existing condition, stopping at the ticket booth and then coming in, and then all of the same scope for the bleachers. This one, you do have a hill kind of dropping off, so we're trying to provide enough room for the plaza without going too far and having to get a really large retaining wall or anything. So we're trying to balance all of that out as well. Looking closer at the floor plan, the initial concept when we established the budget for this project did not include the ticket booth or an outdoor storage room. But after doing our site visits and looking at the existing buildings, they did all have an outdoor storage room, so we wanted to make sure that that was still available to those teams. It was not needed, it did not need to be as big as it was. They were not well utilized. So these are smaller, but we think it'll meet the needs based on how they're utilized today. And then by integrating the ticket booth, we can get rid of the standalone building and just have one building to maintain. And like we said with all of them, the fence line is going to be along here, so the ticket booth will be on the public side, and then your concession and restrooms will all be within the ticketed area. Concession and restrooms all facing one direction, having plenty of room to queue for lines outside. Concessions are very similar in scope to what they are today. A little bit larger, a little bit more room to move around, but this is just for drinks and snacks. It's not any, they're not gonna be preparing or cooking any food here. And if we were to do that, we would have to add grease traps and additional things for health codes, and it adds a lot of cost to the project. And so that has been talked through with athletics, and they're okay with that. The restrooms, you'll see there's a lot more toilets and plumbing fixtures than there were before. This brings it up to current code. There's certain numbers required for men and women based on the number of bleacher seats that you have. And you were deficient even with the previous bleacher counts that you had. And now we're adding some bleachers. So that's why you see the amount that you do, but this does not exceed code, this meets code. And then you see a family restroom here as well in the center, which is required by code when you get to assemblies of this size. And I think it's just a good amenity to have for those families when they need it as well.
What are the ceilings? Are they drop ceilings or sheetrock ceilings?
We typically do sheetrock ceilings. We don't want to allow anybody to hide anything up in ceiling tiles.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, and also for ventilation too.
Yes, and speaking of ventilation, we are talking about conditioning these buildings as well. And that, we don't want to have any freezing pipes or anything like have happened in the past. And so we are planning to condition these buildings. This is showing the exterior. The intent is to match the bricks that are on the indoor facilities at each campus. And we haven't worked through all the door colors, if those match the blue at Bell or, whichever we want to do. But in general, it will match the concepts of the indoor facilities. And then on the exterior, kind of outside walls of each one, you can see it's a solid wall, no openings. And all of those either face a street or a parking lot, kind of the public side of things. And so there is the opportunity to put a logo on each of those 4 buildings. Okay, and then looking a little bit closer at the bleachers themselves, we're adding 9 rows and then the pre-manufactured press box at the top. This is about the same number of rows as what's at the softball fields. It is a fewer rows, 3 or 4 fewer rows than what's at the baseball fields. But if we were to add any other rows beyond the 9, we're starting to compete with the clearances between that and the new buildings in some of those, so it would get pinched. So I think this is what fits comfortably at all of those. And it adds 180 new seats at each facility. And so this shows you the total seat counts for baseball will be 838, and the total seat counts at softball will be 640. We'd also talked about an alternate item for covering over these bleachers, just for shade. And we are talking to a couple different vendors, one that would be a metal structure and one that would be a fabric covering, obviously supported by steel. And we don't have those designs and prices from them yet. I just want to let you know that that is in the works. And it is included on this price cost estimate at the bottom, towards the bottom line A1. This would be the metal option, which is the higher priced option. And this is kind of a placeholder price until we get that final design, but this is based off of something that we have done recently in Forney ISD. And this would cover all 3 sections of the bleachers at each field if you wanted to approve the alternate, depending on how final numbers come in.
1.28 million, that includes everything else?
Correct.
When
yes.
I was reading it, I thought that was just for the building.
Yeah, the 1.2 million is the price per building, per site, and it does include the building and the site work. The only thing in addition to that is the cover for the bleachers. Based on the initial design concepts that we put together a few months ago, this is around, so the $5 million is the total project cost, all 4 campuses combined. That's about $700,000 more than the initial concept, which is actually pretty close, I'd say, when we're just going off of a concept. There's a few factors in that, and for once, it's not escalation and inflation. We added about 100 square feet per building by putting the ticket booth in there and the storage compared to the initial concept. Civil site costs were more than what were originally estimated, and then like we'd mentioned, we're gonna make sure these buildings are conditioned as well. So that puts us at just over $5 million.
We also included, if you notice too, the back of that wall, if it was backed up to the street, there's no conduits. We brought also an electrical room inside, and it's not part of the concession room itself, so it's a little bit of additional space there as well.
Josh, can you touch on the IT, putting up those signal
There was a concern that being able to have people inside the concession stand not be able to see the fields anymore. IT has put up some shotgun Wi-Fi cannons to where they can get the signal over and we can actually stream. And so I watch my nieces now online all the time, so the same thing could happen. We can actually put a TV and have that streamed inside the concession stand as well.
That's all within the time frame.
That would be inconsequential. It'd be all right.
So Aubrey, I got a quick clarifying question as I do the math here. That A1, that 828 is for all 4 buildings, not for per building, right?
Correct.
Okay. Because that reads a little funny, but I got it. Yeah, I know, that's my point.
Oh, no,
exactly.
it is, yeah, it is per building, but that's what I'm saying, that's the more expensive metal structure option. And when we get those designs, we will compare the price of both of those.
Okay, so forgive me, I'm slow here. So just for clarification, that's really 3.3 million more if we're taking 4 buildings in consideration, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing I have is the schedule update. We're bringing the schematic design presentation to you tonight, and should you approve that at the board meeting later this month, we're going to proceed straight into construction documents. This isn't really a big enough project to need multiple phases of design, so we'll just get busy with documents. Put those out to bid in March, and then bring a contractor to you at the April board meeting. Construction will begin after spring season ends, and those fields are available around the end of May. And it will be completed around the end of December. We're showing 1st of January so that those fields are available for when the next season starts in 2024.
So does that make the fields unusable for the summertime?
We've still got to work that out, but knowing where the construction's gonna be, which is basically gonna be behind the play, I foresee us continuing to be able to rent those. We, as you may know, we've generated over $100,000
Right.
the last 24 months on rentals in the summer and fall.
Right.
So, it's just a matter of, getting with Josh, getting with the contractor, and making sure they make it safe in their work area and give it,
Okay.
the rest of the field. On the field is unimpacted, so we can certainly be on the field.
The only thing that we will lose is the power runs through the concession stand to get to to control the lights on the field. So we wouldn't be able to use the fields at night for a certain period of time. Our engineers were looking to see if there's any way that we could temporary that or provide some sort of solution to where we could continue to use those all the way through the process, but they haven't come back with anything on that just yet.
Is that on every stadium?
Yes. Yeah, because essentially we're all basically built off of a similar design and all those controls right into the middle of the old stands.
I have one more question, and it's about the new set of bleachers. It looks like, I've never been to the softball field at Bell, but all the other fields I've been to, and I think that the existing bleachers are in a position to where you don't really see the back side of it or the underneath side of it, or you can't get to the back side of it or underneath side of it. But it looks like those new bleachers, you're gonna see the back side and underneath side when you walk in. So are we making it so that people can't get underneath there? Or are we gonna do something about,
I think I've seen one in baseball field that I don't know about the softball field.
There could be a solution for that.
Okay.
If you look at the football, same thing. We don't at Trinity because it's built into an embankment.
Right.
But if you look at Bell, there's fencing around that too. And we did that,
Right.
I think when we did the last extension and work on Bell, the Raider Bowl, that was to minimize people being able to get up underneath those.
Okay.
So there could be a solution for that, yes.
Just wanna make sure you got that on your radar.
Talking about like Bell Baseball, they have like graphics from, it says Blue Raider Baseball or whatever, it's a triangular on one end and the other, it's a fabric. And that's an easy fix for that.
Okay.
A lot of our fields, you may not have noticed, but if you're behind it or to the side of it, you can see the girders or whatever, but we could solve that with fabric.
Okay.
Like some of those teams currently have.
All right, any additional questions?
So just procedurally and based on the project timeline, how does the alternative bid item factor into this? How does that actually work?
So we will continue to put that in the documents, just based off of previous direction. And that will be a separate bid item on the proposal form that the contractor will fill out. And just based on where that comes in, you all can choose to approve that alternate bid item or not,
And
separate from the rest of the project.
Will they be able to bid metal or fabric?
We hadn't discussed that. We can see where those options come in, and if that's something that you'd like us to pursue, we can certainly do that.
I'd like to get as many options as
Okay,
possible
okay, yeah, we
before
can
we
do that.
decide.
And Aubrey, would there be a possibility of getting an option that only covers the center? So there is one, at least one covered piece option there?
Yes, we could do that too.
Cover block the press box.
Yeah, it would
Yeah,
have to be
it
pretty
would be
high.
above the press
Yeah.
box.
Hadn't thought of that.
All right, quarterly investment report for quarter ending November 2022.
Thank you.
I don't think I have any, my name's not up there, but it is there for you to, your viewing pleasure.
Are there
If
any
you've got
questions on the quarterly investment
Happy
report?
to answer them. We are excited about getting 4.5% interest. We haven't seen that in a long time. Thought I'd never say that, but
All right, financial statements for the month of November 2022.
okay. Okay, let's see if we can work through this pretty quickly. These are your financial statements for November 30th, 2022, so we still are fairly early in our fiscal year. Looking at the general fund, we have a fund balance of $150,002,020. That still represents more expenditures than revenue, which is common this time of year, until our tax collections start ramping up, which they'll start showing up in January, of course, so that'll flip. Total expenditures as of 11/30 are at 25.19%, so we're very close to our 3/12, a fourth of our year at 25%. So we're performing as expected in the general fund. The Wrestler report, payroll, of course, is our biggest one at 82%, $40,744,771. That, of course, is less than our 80% that we run, but that will inch closer to that 87% as the year goes. Utilities, $997,533, 2%. Instructional supplies at $776,63 are at 2%. So that's very normal for where we are at this time of year. So that's all doing quite well. Food service fund, fund balance of $8,922,341. That represents revenues over expenditures of $515,362. The department continues to operate well, but as we say every month, we're like a broken record. It's just we're doing the best we can with the people we have, and it's running pretty steady. We're not really gaining people or losing people, but we are still short people. So
Toby, ballpark, how far off are we? How many people are those, is that?
we're down about 30. What did I tell you this morning, Jill? 33, something like that. And then we kind of average about 12 absences on a Monday, and that's kind of where we were this morning. So that's fairly normal. Is what it is. Like I say, the workforce is just lacking out there right now. Expenditures as of 11/30 were at 16.68, so again, well within that 25% range. So fund is operating very well. Debt service fund, again, this will increase as tax collections increase, the revenues will increase. Debt service payments coming up pretty quick, $7.28 million will be due February 15th, so we will get that sent in. And then the final payment will be due of $29.5 million will be due in August. And of course, the annual budget for that this year is $36,781. And I don't have it up here, but we will be coming to you pretty quick with doing that, refunding some, not refunding, but I forgot the word. What was it called? Defeasing, yes, it's a word I can't ever remember. Defeasing some of those bonds going forward, so. Pre-K, CK, revenues exceed expenditures by $271,500 508. Our fund balance in that program is 356,930. Expenditures as of 11/30 are at 21.76, so under the 25% again. That program is performing as expected. Special revenue funds, of course, those are all of our federal funds. Those programs are self-sufficient. They're doing quite well at 23.18% of the budget. Campus activity funds, fund balance of $3,777,616. That represents revenues over expenditures of $1,003,879. And that fund, those funds are performing as they should. No issues there. 2018 bond fund, again, most of this is all going towards or all of it is now, with the exception of technology has a little bit of budget left from that, but they're spending through that as well. But the remainder is going towards the Bel Air project. That fund balance is at $24,509,892. Revenues over expenditures $29,554, but that's because it's early in the year. We will start. That will flip over because we won't have any revenues coming in other than interest income. And our possible bond series 2024, these are, of course, the expenditures that we're preparing for and getting ready for a possible bond election in the future. That is a fund balance of $173,409, and that is expenditures over revenues in the amount of $118,809. And the locally defined fund, $58,523,432. That's expenditures over revenues in the amount of $273,87. Those are currently the other part of the Bel Air Elementary rebuild. And the transition remodel, the admin parking lot, which I'm glad to say is all the concrete's in. We should be able to park on that next week, we hope. And then finishing up a few other projects. And then, of course, we're starting up some other projects that we talked about in the facilities meeting that will be coming out of this fund as well. Any questions on any of that?
Any questions on the financial statements? All right, Region 10 ESC Multi-Region Purchasing Cooperative Agreement. Any questions on that? 7.05 Birdville ISD Regional Day School Program for the Deaf and Voice. Any questions on that? All right, we're ready to move down to action items. Consider approval to rescind purchase awarded to GovConnections Inc. for RFP 22-21 for purchase of protective Chromebook cases. Do you have something to tell us, or just answering questions?
Sure. As you know, in December, our December meeting, you awarded the purchase that that's on the table tonight to GovConnections. And Ms. Jordan Wells, I have thought of you first whenever this all unraveled. You asked the question, why aren't we going for the low bid? Well, we normally would have, and we tried to confirm information with them, and we're unable to do so. So after the award was made, we issued the notice of award, and then Thursday of that week, the low vendor contacted us and wanted to know why they weren't being recommended. And we said we tried to confirm with you. We didn't get a response, so we had no choice but to go to the next low bidder. And they provided us evidence that they had indeed contacted us, and through our communication system, through our eBid system, it directed it to an email address that was no longer monitored every day. But during the course of things, it was a valid communication tool. So that's when we went into the action that we're recommending tonight. We notified the vendor that we did award to and told them we're going to cancel the order and do not fill this order. And we went through a series of dialogue with them, wondering why and so forth. We explained that to them, and they understand that. And then so that's when we're making the recommendation to rescind the award. And then the next item you have for action is to award it to who it should have been awarded to begin with.
All right, any questions?
So I have one question, not necessarily about this particular issue, but is there anything we can do in the future to prevent or double
We already
mediate
did.
or call or something so this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, we did. We've redirected I'm still learning about how things were set up. So that's probably more on me than anything else. But now that, things kind of are disclosed during the course of business. And one way you find out about them is to learn how to from the root. The other way you find out about them is through actions like this right here. So we learned where that is, and we've had a good conversation with our the e-bid system publisher, and now we know how to turn that off and make sure those things are directed properly. So I can't stand here and say we will never have another communication issue. We're going to do our dead level best not to have that. So we'll make sure we cover all our bases.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve to rescind the award to GovConnections, Inc. for RFP 2221 for purchase of protective Chromebook cases as presented.
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds to move that the board approve to rescind the award to GovConnections Incorporated for RFP 22-21 for purchase of protective Chromebook cases as presented. Please vote.
Who did Ty choose? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Take the next one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you get the next one.
Remember when I wanted that whole systematic thing, and then Faye was like, no, that's not the way
That's
to
not
do
how
it?
it works, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, consider approval of RFP 22-21 protective Chromebook cases. Any questions? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the purchase to be awarded to Tech Cycle Solutions as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the purchase to be awarded to Tech Cycle Solutions as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. Consider approval of purchase maintenance vehicles. Any questions on this item? I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the purchase of Silsby Ford under Tips USA contract number 210907 as presented.
Second.
I move that I have a motion, a second, that the board approves the purchase to Silsby Ford under Tips USA contract number 210907 as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. And let's see, consider approval of donations for the January regular board meeting presentation of certificates of appreciation. I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the January 2023 donations as presented.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, for the board to approve the January 2023 donations as presented. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, other business, opportunity for board members to request items be placed on future board agendas.
I got a couple. I'm gonna try again. I like to talk to the math coordinator, and it's all good stuff. I just wanna know what she does. And then I wanna know the 201 and extended day money, supposed to be a chart of what each school has. I'd like to try that again. And I'm gonna add that, I wanna, either Brandon or Streeter to talk about, the exemption. I've got a lot of parents complaining to me about exemption, and there's one thing I kinda disagreed with. So if you just present the policy and a couple of things I'd like to question.
And we still have those first two waiting, right? Or you're
The
working on
first
this?
two are scheduled for the next board meeting. I think they put that, I thought they put that in the Friday update, but if not, we will address those at the next meeting, the discretionary funds and the,
I was
And
trying
the
to do it,
math.
I was trying to
And
do it during the work session.
Oh.
If you want to wait till the work session, that's fine with me.
okay, we can
You
move
can
that.
do the exemption next time.
Okay, and do we have a second for the exemptions? All right, we have a second.
So we'll do the exemption at the next meeting and then do the other two
Yes,
at the work
at the
session.
work session.
Perfect.
All right, review of board activity chart. I have not looked at it yet, but.
Are we splitting up the Trinity and Bell football game?
It's up to y'all. Yeah,
I'm
so,
going to the Bell, I think I'll go to Bell, but just to make sure somebody's going to Trinity. I'm going
man, there's a couple people going to Trinity. Yeah. All right, let's see, item 9.03, consider approval of the TASB Legislative Conference. This is a conference that is coming up in February, and Ms. Cole has interest in attending. So I'll let her talk a little bit more about it.
No, this is the in-state, the Texas Legislative Conference.
Yeah, this is
It's
the
a
one going to Austin.
one-day- It's a one-day, conference in Austin. I don't actually, Mr. Romero, it's up to you, but, our board operating procedures say that if the total cost is less than $500, it doesn't require, an action vote. And since the conference is free and the travel would be under $500, I don't think we need to vote on it, but, but the whole point was to just put it on your radar. I know I talked about it when you all did your advocacy update, but the opportunity to, register for it is taking place.
And is it limited to how many can go?
No. I plan to go.
So any of us, all of us can go if we had the
Absolutely.
schedule ability to go, but getting there would be an expense.
Right, and we would have to travel the night before,
Yes.
because it starts at like 8 o'clock in the morning.
So I don't remember what it says. Is it $500 total or $500 per person?
Well, I took it as $500 per person. I'm okay with, go ahead and, okay,
Yeah, so,
okay. Okay.
We'll work on.
Let's just vote on it then.
yeah. Yeah, so who else, can anyone else commit to it at this time, or is people just gonna look at it?
I can commit, I just didn't realize we have to go the night before.
Yeah, it starts at
Okay.
8 a.m.
Let's put this as a 2-day thing. I would like to.
All right, so Julie Cole and Don Jordan Wells, I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board send Julie Cole and Don Jordan Wells to the TASB Legislative Conference in Austin.
I have a motion and a second for the board to send Julie Cole and Don Jordan Wells to the TASB Legislative Conference in Austin, Texas. Please vote.
You can ride with me.
I was saying I gotta work during the day probably.
Oh.
Take a late flight.
Okay.
And that motion passes. Anything for open forum number 2? All right, then we will adjourn into closed session pursuant to Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to sections 551.071 to 551.074. Go Frogs.
Y'all are dismissed except for Cicely.
Yeah.